This case should never have come to trial.
I don't think it's fair to call my clients frauds. Because one time I turned into a dog and they helped me. Thank you.
Your Honor, we would like to withdraw our plea of not guilty and enter a plea of guilty.
This trial is a travesty. It's a travesty of a mockery, of a sham, of a mockery, of a travesty, of two mockeries, of a sham.
If we are to have faith in justice, we need only to believe in ourselves.
And the truth shall set you free!
How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Oh, guilty, but with a real good excuse.
I think the truth will come forth.
You can't handle the truth!
Hey, good morning. Travis Holtrey from Foreman Watson Holtrey, and you're welcome to the very first version 1.1 of Law Lite Podcast, brought to you from Owensboro, Kentucky, in the high rise at Foreman Watson Holtrey, 530 Frederica Street. Welcome, PJ, my guest. Introduce yourself, Peach.
Hello, I am PJ.
That's pretty good. To the point.
Yes.
Hey, this is Law Lite, and hey, let's just talk for a second, Peach, about our vision here, because, you know, we're going to jump into some crazy stuff, right? The two of
absolutely.
us. Yeah, and so just a little bit of background first. I graduated from law school in 1995 and have made a career out of litigating, especially in personal injury cases and a lot of insurance litigation, wrongful death cases, medical malpractice, and things like that. And over my years of being in the courthouses across the state of Kentucky and in southern Indiana, I've encountered some crazy things. And the practice of law is so much fun, and there's a side of it that nobody gets to see. And then that's my vision, is that we share that. But I brought you into this because of your background. So tell me a little bit about you.
Well, I'm the odd man out. I'm not an attorney. I have no legal background, so I'm just a regular Joe Schmo off the street. But my background is, what I do for Foreman Watson Holtrey is I'm the director of technical operations, which is just a fancy way of saying I'm your video guy.
BS.
or I frequently get mistaken for the IT guy, which I am not.
You're
the
not
IT
the
guy.
IT guy.
But so I've just always had a fascination with like storytelling and visual storytelling more so.
Right.
So since I was about 12 years old, I've been dabbling with, camera equipment and putting films together and documentaries together and things of that nature. So professionally, I've been doing video work for over almost 20 years. I worked at a TV station for about a decade. Then my wife said, you need a job that pays the bills.
Right, because like dabbling in cameras isn't going to pay the bills. Yeah,
well, it can, but as you know, you always live above your means.
Right.
And so doing something I was passionate about at the time and trying to live above our means was not really panning out. Plus, we just started a family and stuff like that. Right. So, we hadn't just started a family. We'd had a family for a while at the time that I moved to another, I ended up going on to a factory job, which I absolutely hated.
Enjoyed that, right?
No, it was soul-sucking.
Rolling out the widgets.
It was awful. It was the worst.
Yeah,
but,
so
it paid the bills.
How did you get rescued from that, Peach?
Well, ironically, I got into a car wreck. And I was sandwiched between an SUV and a van. Mm-hmm. So traffic had come to almost a standstill, and this van hit me just like going like 35 miles an hour. They didn't stop. And so I put something.
Sign that case up.
Yeah, well, you would think. And so I put something on Facebook, which is always the best thing to do. Yeah.
Don't put anything on social media if you've been in a wreck. Ever. Thank you.
Yeah, mine was more so like, hey, I got into a wreck, just letting people
know. Like everybody
I took a
does.
photo
Yes,
of the
PJ.
car. Yeah.
Never put anything on Facebook.
Yeah, I learned that after the fact. Right. Yeah,
Very
you
good.
still shouldn't do that.
And if I haven't said it already, don't put anything on social media about your wrecks. Go ahead.
Right. Funny enough, though, that actually panned out for me in the long run because Tyler, that is one of the attorneys here.
Tyler Johnson.
Reached out, yes. And I went to school with Tyler, graduated with him. And so he reached out and he was like, hey, give me a call. So called him, explained to him what was going on. So sat down with him, gave him all the information. Then he gives me a call back and he's like, there's a conflict of interest.
Okay, so conflict of interest, big legal word. We'll get to that. Go ahead.
So the conflict of interest, now I didn't find this out until after the fact, till I started here, but the conflict of interest was the people that hit me, you guys were representing in a separate,
in a different case,
auto collision case, where the wreck wasn't their fault.
Right. So these people had had a bad roll of things.
If I remember correctly, they actually hit me with the rental van.
That's correct.
They were.
It was a mess. It was a law school question.
Yeah. So I ended up going to another attorney and settling my case there. But then, I think it was like a month later, I got a call back from Tyler, who said, "Hey, Travis Holtrey, who's the managing partner here. He went to this seminar. He sat through this. It's like a video seminar. He came back with these ideas." And I told him, I know a guy, so I want you to come in and have a sit down with him. And I sent Tyler some examples of things that I'd done.
I remember getting those, something like for the United Way and stuff.
Yeah. I'd done some commercial work and things. Yeah. So I came in, sat down with you guys, and 4 years later, here I am.
Okay, so we're going to get to some more stuff about your early time here, and I think eventually we've mapped out sort of what we want to talk about. And so we're going to talk more about those first few weeks of yours here at the firm, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's
so
always
we'll
fun.
get to that, but let's talk for a second about what we think listeners can expect as this podcast moves from version 1.1 to 1.2 to 1.3. Because you and I have really put some thought behind this, and we want this to be something that is beneficial to the public, but also light and fun, right? I mean, so it's kind of that line. We want to give them some information, but at the same time, tell some of our crazy stories. Because just in 4 years, you hanging out with me, we've had some crazy stuff happen, right? And then I'm always telling
several books.
That's right, already. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to make sure that people understand that every day they listen to this thing, it's going to be a little bit different, right? I mean, we're going to draw from all kinds of backgrounds. We're going to bring in people from our staff. We're going to bring in other attorneys. We got us this new. What did we buy, by the way? What is that thing over there? This big.
This is the Zoom H6.
Okay, so the Zoom H6 that'll let us we can get people calling up in here and talking to us, right? On the phone. So we could dial. Some days we could just see what happens when we call somebody right, and see what happens, right? So so let's talk for a second, PJ. We represent real people with real crisis, right? And so we've just started off this new campaign or new slogan here at the office that your problem is our passion.
Right.
And one of the things I wanted to ask you, because you're right, you don't have a legal background. You are. We need to, before we go any further, let's just go ahead and uncover the whole. Who else are you? What else do you do that you're kind of known here locally for?
I do independent film production.
Let's go ahead quickly and talk about what kind of independent films, because we don't want.
Right, I mainly do horror films.
Okay, very good.
Like
the blood and guts and chainsaws and knives and all kinds of stuff. Right.
There's some story and some narrative and characterization and things mixed in, but I mainly do horror.
Okay,
is what I.
And that's sort of like your passion. Like that's
right. It's like my professional hobby.
Alone time.
Right.
Okay. And so you're now raising money for Volumes of Blood. 3. Is that right? And when I hired you, you were in the middle of Volumes of Blood 1. Is that right?
Well, the first one had already kind of gone through the whole film festival circuit and that kind of a thing. It had we were working on getting distribution for the first film, and we at the same time were also in pre-production for the second film. Right.
I want to get your perspective real quick before we start launching off into this podcast world, which is a whole different world, isn't it? It's when we started looking at and dreaming about doing this, it was like, oh my gosh, look at the opportunities here.
Oh yeah.
But before we head off there, with our new slogan being your problem, our passion. From your perspective, you get to tell the story in a lot of our cases, right? Our cases come in, we kind of put them on the board and say, what's the story behind this case? And then we try to bring that out and we put it in a video, right?
Correct.
Okay. Does it amaze you that every case has a different story and different problem?
Yeah, it's funny because I was thinking about that yesterday. In some ways they are similar, because one thing that I have noticed as far as like similarities among people who come in, one of the things I noticed that they tend to say a lot is, as the wreck was happening or the incident or the situation, whatever the case may be, it really does feel like it's like time is going in slow motion. From one person to the next, no matter what the background is, they have a very similar experience. On the flip side, yeah, from one case to the next, they differ in so many ways from the circumstances of how they happen, because people are different in so many ways. Their way of telling the story differs, and that always makes it and keeps it interesting. Now, some are more compelling than others, because we've had individuals come in that had they not had this accident and you just sat them down and tell their story, because you always have them kind of give their background and kind of lead into, and sometimes those aspects alone are just as fascinating, if not more so, than what happened to them. It's unfortunate why we're having to sit down and talk to these people, because I'm really into like people living their lives and the different types of experiences people have, and I think a lot of people are like that nowadays. That's why like reality TV is so hot. Know?
One of the things is, every case, just the smallest change of fact. Just the smallest change can make the case totally different. Like yesterday, we were looking at a case.
That's exactly what I was just thinking.
We were looking at a case, and you had prepared. You'd worked, 15, 20 hours on putting together the video on that case, and Holly Lindsay from our Ohio County office had worked with you on it, and you guys had put together, I think it was about a 27-minute video.
Right.
And I watched it, and there was one small fact that needed to be tweaked, right? There was one small thing that I was like, wait a minute, this takes this case, this takes this person's problem and brings it even more into the form. And that was what? It was the fact that the semi-tractor trailer that had struck our client, right, was out of service, right? Okay, and so now all of a sudden we have a company who has a vehicle on the road that's out of service that hit our client. And so just that one little fact brings this problem, it wrenches it up a little,
Yeah.
And isn't that our job as attorneys, is to pay attention to the details?
It is. And it's funny too, because I mean, as someone who's a storyteller, I pay attention to a lot of details as well, but that was a situation where, I had sat down, obviously, and spent a lot of time editing that and that kind of thing, putting the story together, but that never really dawned on me. And I think, too, that there's so many facets to the legal system,
right,
that even as someone who is kind of on the outside, even though I'm ingrained in what you guys do, I'm still consistently learning new things. So I think that's one of the reasons why this podcast is a great idea, because someone who's not like me, who's just sitting out there doing some other position or job or whatever, is going to now be in the position I'm in, where it's like, I never thought of that.
Right. And it's to educate the public. So often, let me tell you, I get called, what do I get called? Ambulance chaser?
Should I?
Right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, should I say it?
And people always, people always like, can I tell you a legal joke, an attorney joke? And you know what? Quite frankly, I say, sure. It's not probably one I've never heard.
Right.
It's like but the reality is if people were able to kind of see the inside of what we do, and to hear our heart, and to hear the second part of that phrase, our passion, why we're passionate about it. I mean, you and I have sat down there in that conference room videotaping people, and they cry about things that you would never expect them to cry about. Yesterday, we heard from a client who was planning her granddaughter's wedding, and because of being injured, right, had to sit out on that preparation. And of all the things she talked about, we talked about a fractured elbow, we talked about a fractured wrist, we talked about how she was injured, and we talked about how strange of a set of facts that was. Of all the things we talked about, what was it that made her cry? It was not being able to participate in her granddaughter's wedding. And somebody say, why do I do what I do? Why am I passionate about it? Because I've sat a few feet away from people and watched them cry about missing their granddaughter's wedding.
Right.
You know, and until I, this whole road started for me back in 1995. And God knows how long I'll keep doing it. I've got a lot of kids in college, so it's probably going to be a long time. But I'm telling you, that's why I'm passionate about it. That's why we do what we do, right? And hopefully Law Lite, while it's fun and entertaining, but we shed some light on a lot of the misconceptions that people have about lawyers in the legal system.
And, it's funny. When I first started here, even I heard the same things, like you said a second ago, ambulance chaser.
Right.
There is that idea that what you do, you're just running around and which is exactly just
chasing the lottery
following people
digger.
And saying, oh, hey, you were hit by a car, you should go after these people.
Right.
And it is not that at all.
Right.
And there is a very human side to what's happening to these people that everybody on the outside doesn't see unless you're directly involved with an individual who has been injured in some form or fashion.
And the other thing, and it's what we're going to get to in future podcast. What are these things called, by the way? Like, what are each one of them? Each one of them's a separate
podcast. Yeah,
podcast episode. Yeah, there you go. All right. In future episodes, from our planning of things we want to talk about, we're going to talk about some of the day in, day out planning of these cases. But if these cases are handled correctly and with respect and with diligence, a job done right gets noticed, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we've had adjusters call us and say
there's a stigma with people, even ones who have signed, like clients who've signed on. When I'm talking to them before a video shoot, they'll say like, I don't want people to think that I'm just doing this to try to get money.
Right.
And there is that stigma. And, I try to tell them, like, you're a person who's in pain and you're suffering and you're having to go through something that wasn't your fault. You're accumulating bills that aren't your fault that you can't afford. So no, This is not about you just trying to suck money out of somebody else's pocket. This is you trying to be compensated for something that you had no idea was going to happen. You didn't wake up that day and say, you know what, I really hope that my back gets fractured.
Right.
You don't, so.
Or that my head goes through a windshield.
Right.
Right.
When they sit down and they tell the story, and then we send it to adjusters. Yeah, going into this whole thing, the video side of it, we didn't really know what was going to happen because that first year was it was like a trial and error kind of a thing. But I remember sitting in the foxhole, and here you would open the door and come in and go, you got to listen to this, and adjusters would say things like, well, it's my job to try to get these people compensated, maybe not necessarily as much as that what they deserve, but get them something.
Right.
But now that I'm sitting there and I'm watching them talk about how it's affected their lives, how it's affected their families' lives, they see the emotion. It's like they've said
they have to deal
fully,
with it.
Yeah, it's like I can't ignore this, and I'm going to give these people as much as I'm able to.
Allowed to. That's
right.
We've had adjusters ask us for our cell phone numbers so that they can talk to us off of a recorded line, right?
I remember that the one who called and said, yeah, I'm calling you from my cell phone because they record the company calls.
Absolutely.
If we call out from the work phone.
And if in ending this, if there's ever something that would make you passionate about what you do, it's that kind of phone call.
Exactly.
Because we know there is something there that the insurance industry does not want to admit, and that's a human element of these cases.
Yeah,
right?
which is
right.
Yeah, it was eye-opening and sad.
Yeah.
But that's the world we live in.
Hey, now let's real quick as we wrap things up. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of come along. Oh no, you came prepared with.
Oh,
I
came prepared.
All right. So it's going to be. I'm going to ask you a question that's a legal question and see how close you get to answering it.
It'll be so close, you have no idea how close.
And then you're going to ask me a question from your hickambaloo or whatever all that is you do over there.
That's actually that's the right term.
That's right. And so and it's because I'm going to shock you with how well I answer your question.
Okay.
So you're going to go first, or you want me to go first?
You go first because I'm less intelligent than you.
Okay, I'm going to go first. So you're going to ask me first, or I'm asking you first?
No, you ask me first.
I'm asking you first, so
right.
That's what you
but
meant
you
by
can't
me
use,
going first.
You can't use whatever the word was that you threw at me whenever we were just giving examples.
I'm going to save that one, okay? All right, here we go. If an attorney tells you they're going to Rule 11 you, what does that mean?
Rule 11 me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, jeez. There's so many rules. I don't. How am I supposed to? This is a total crapshoot now.
Okay,
okay. Rule 11.
Ask the expert.
I don't know. I don't even want to begin to guess.
I don't know.
There's 10 other rules before that.
You can't plead the fifth because that's you're not. It's not anything criminal here. Or if an attorney says, "Oh my gosh, I could get Rule 11."
Does it mean like shut down in some way?
Well, that's close. Okay, so Rule 11 is the governing rule of our trial rules or our rules of civil procedure that deal with sanctioning lawyers for doing things that he or she should not do, that are out of the scope of their representation. Misrepresentation, delay, things like that, they could get sanctioned for, and it's basically for behavior that's unbecoming to the profession. So there's a specific rule written in the civil rules that allow for sanctioning of attorneys for that kind of conduct. So you can threaten other attorneys with, I'm going to file a Rule 11 motion on you if you continue to do this. But likewise, it's a two-way street, and so you have to live under that gavel as well. Hey, you do not tiptoe even close to that line where you could get sanctioned. So basically, right. Rule 11 is the sanctioning rule for attorneys.
So it's like the whistleblower rule.
Well, kind of, yeah.
It's the tattletale rule.
Right. It's the tattletale rule. That's exactly right. Nanny, nanny, poo, poo.
Okay, so let's see what you got on this. I wrote down. I copy and pasted the exact dictionary definition of this because I have my own, but I wanted to make sure.
Very well prepared. I'm proud of you, Peach.
Okay,
you wouldn't have done this 4 years ago. You would not have taken
No, but we'll discuss that in a future episode.
In a future episode. That's the word.
Episode. Capital E.
Okay, let's go.
Okay.
Shoot, I'm ready. Let's go. Bring it on.
What is a best boy?
A what?
A best boy.
A best boy.
On it's
B-O-Y?
Yes, B-O-Y.
A best boy.
What is a best boy?
And this is can I ask another question? Are we allowed to ask?
Sure, why not?
Okay, so is this like within the filming?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's on it's like a position on a set.
Well, the best boy, okay, so when you are filming, you have multiple angles and cameras running, okay? Mm-hmm. And so you're going to have one that's going to be like a main, and then you're going to have others that aren't the main camera. And so the slang term for like the main camera, the one you always can cut to if the other ones don't, is called the best boy.
No. That's way off.
Okay. But it sounded good.
It did sound good. It did sound good.
I was pretty impressed with my own answer.
Right. Actually, the answer to what you just said was there's A roll and there's B roll. So your main camera would be A roll.
Okay.
And then any other secondary cameras picking up like side action or a different angle would be B roll.
Gotcha.
So
okay. So best boy is nothing to do with that.
No.
Bring it to me. What is it?
It is the assistant to the chief electrician on the set.
All right.
And the chief electrician is a gaffer.
Okay, so let me get this right. So around here I'm the gaffer. And
right.
And all these other people
I would be your best boy.
Best boy.
Kind of, yeah. If you were chief electrician, everyone here would kind of
I'm going to use this for my sons. I'm going to say I'm the gaffer, you're the best boy.
There you go.
Go pick up your room. Right?
Yeah.
Best boy.
And it's a positive thing. It makes it sound good.
Boy.
You're the best boy. You should clean. That's what best boys do.
That's what best boys do.
Yeah.
Best boys do what the gaffer says. You know what's funny is gaffer has a negative implication. Like gaffer. You gaffer. Like that, you know?
Right.
Okay, so gaffer is like the head honcho, and best boy is secondary. So they've got it flipped. Is that like a common thing in the filming industry that they have at work? You know what I think of gaffer is like a deep sea, like when a fish comes in, you got to gaff it or something. Isn't that a word? Like they got to put a big thing in the side of it and hook it up. I think of a gaffer like doing that kind of work, not being the head honcho, like head electrician.
Yeah, best boy does sound better.
It does.
Yeah.
Best boy should be the head electrician. The gaffer should be the guy carrying the bags.
Right. Well, it's funny because it's like with producing, there's producer and then there's executive producer. You would assume an executive producer is higher up in the food chain.
Absolutely.
No, not the case at all.
Hey, we're getting a phone call.
Hey, what do you know?
I hung up on it. It was Holly Lindsay.
Oh, yeah, it's not important. Love you, Holly. But yeah, no. So an executive producer is in a lot of times on films, it's like an honorary position.
Right. All right. There you go.
Yep.
So now I got 2 expert questions out of you. You can't use that one for another time. All right. So this is the old gaffer and the best boy signing off.
Yes.
We will be back with Law Lite version 1.2. Listen to us next week, every Friday. These babies are rolling out, so be paying attention. Welcome aboard. Look forward to fun things. Talk to you.
This case should never have come to trial.
I don't think it's fair to call my clients frauds. Because one time I turned into a dog and they helped me. Thank you.
Your Honor, we would like to withdraw our plea of not guilty and enter a plea of guilty.
This trial is a travesty. It's a travesty of a mockery, of a sham, of a mockery, of a travesty of 2 mockeries of a sham.
If we are to have faith and justice, we need only to believe in ourselves.
And the truth shall set you free!
How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Oh, guilty, but with a real good excuse.
I think the truth will come forth.
You can't handle the truth!